There is one building in the world that became something far more than just architecture. It was not a government headquarters, not a financial center, and not even the tallest skyscraper ever built. It was a hotel. A sail-shaped, gold-covered, man-made island hotel so extravagant that a British journalist once said it deserved 7 stars, because 5 was simply not enough to describe what she had experienced inside. Since its opening in December 1999, the Burj Al Arab has stood on its own private artificial island, connected to the mainland by a single curving bridge that feels less like infrastructure and more like a controlled gateway. Rising 321 meters above the Arabian Gulf, designed to resemble the sail of a traditional Arabian dhow, it was built with one very specific goal in mind: to become an instantly recognizable symbol that would link the entire world to the identity of Dubai. And it worked so completely that for more than 2 decades, you could show its silhouette to someone who had never been to the Middle East, and they would still recognize it instantly. Which is exactly why what happened on the night of February 28, 2026 felt so different. Because when footage began circulating showing smoke and fire on the outer facade of the Burj Al Arab, this was no longer just a hotel incident. It was a global symbol taking a hit. But to understand why that moment mattered, you have to look past the fire itself and focus on what happened immediately after, because the damage you could see on the outside of the building was only a very small part of the story. This is not just about a hotel that caught fire. It is about what happens when a place that built its entire global reputation on safety, control, and insulation from chaos is suddenly forced into the same reality it promised people they could escape from. And once you begin to see it from that perspective, the story quickly expands into something far bigger than a single night or a single incident. So let's start with the facts, clearly and precisely, because the amount of misinformation surrounding this event was so significant that authorities in the UAE ended up arresting more than 100 people for sharing what was considered inaccurate content. Here is what actually happened. Debris from an intercepted Iranian drone caused a fire on the outer facade of the Burj Al Arab. Dubai civil defense teams responded quickly, contained the situation, and brought the fire under control in a short period of time. The Dubai media office later confirmed that there were no injuries reported at the property, and more importantly, the structure of the building itself was not compromised. By every engineering standard, the Burj Al Arab came through the events of February 28th intact. The physical damage, in the government's own words, was minor, and on the surface, that should have been the end of the story. But this is where things start to shift. Because when you look at a hotel like the Burj Al Arab, its real value was never in the steel, the glass, or even the materials that made it famous, including the vast use of statuario marble and the approximately 1,790 square meters of 24-karat gold leaf covering its interiors. The real value was something far less tangible. A hotel like this does not sell rooms in the traditional sense. It sells a feeling. It sells a story that begins long before a guest ever arrives and continues long after they leave. A story about what it means to choose this place over anywhere else in the world. And for more than 27 years, the Burj Al Arab has been built on one very specific narrative, repeated consistently across marketing, media, and customer experience. You are completely safe here. The outside world may be unpredictable, unstable, and at times chaotic, but inside this building, on this private island, in this carefully constructed environment, none of that applies to you. That is the product. And it is a product that has been sold at prices starting from around £2,000 per night, going all the way up to £20,000 for the Royal Suite. But here's the critical moment. On the night of February 28th, that story did not just weaken, it caught fire on the side of the building itself. And almost immediately the consequences began to appear somewhere else. Not on the facade, but in the numbers. Because within the first week of the conflict alone, more than 80,000 hotel bookings across Dubai were canceled. Occupancy across the city dropped from around 86% in January 2026 to approximately 20% within just a matter of days, with industry analysts warning that at some properties occupancy could fall into single digits if the situation did not stabilize. And it was not limited to one hotel. The Burj Al Arab, Atlantis The Palm, Jumeirah Beach Hotel, all properties that typically operate near full capacity during peak season, were suddenly struggling to fill rooms, with booking declines reaching up to 40%. The Waldorf Astoria on the Palm was already reporting heavy price cuts and extremely low occupancy levels. And this is where the timing makes everything worse, because March is not just another month for Dubai's luxury hospitality sector. March is peak season. It is when travelers from Europe arrive in large numbers seeking winter sun. It is when corporate events fill hotel ballrooms. It is when high-net-worth visitors from India, the CIS, and Western Europe book the kind of stays that often define an entire year of revenue for properties like the Burj Al Arab. And right in the middle of that window, demand collapsed. Five-star rooms were suddenly being offered at prices that had not been seen at the Burj Al Arab in nearly a decade. The fleet of private Rolls-Royce cars that typically transport guests between the hotel's bridge and the mainland were sitting idle. The 9 restaurants inside the property, including the Michelin-starred venue located 200 meters above the Persian Gulf, were no longer serving international guests. Even the helipad, once used for highly publicized moments like Roger Federer rallying with Andre Agassi or Formula One stunt performances, remained unused. A building that normally operates with waiting lists and is marketed as offering one of the most exclusive hospitality experiences in the world was, for all practical purposes, empty. Not because it was damaged, but because people stopped coming. But here is the part that almost nobody is saying out loud. What you are seeing right now is not just the result of a single night or a single incident involving a drone. This problem did not start on February 28th. It was already there, and what happened that night did not create the crisis. It exposed it, because to understand what is really happening, you have to step back and look at how Dubai's entire tourism model actually works at a structural level. In Dubai, stability is not just a condition that happens to exist. It is a product that is carefully constructed, packaged, and sold to the world. The entire luxury tourism experience of the city is built around one core idea, that this is a place where you are insulated from the instability of the wider region, where East meets West, where your nationality does not matter, where everything functions smoothly, and where the chaos you see in the news simply does not apply to you. That promise is not just marketing. It is embedded into every room rate, every suite booking, every corporate event, and every high-end travel decision tied to the city. And this is where the deeper vulnerability begins to show. Because according to analysis highlighted after the conflict, Dubai's economic model depends heavily on expatriates and international visitors, not just for tourism revenue, but for talent, labor, and investment capital. In simple terms, the city needs people from outside to believe in that promise. It needs them to feel safe enough to come, to stay, to spend, and to build their lives and businesses there. And the moment that sense of guaranteed safety is questioned, even slightly, the impact does not stay contained within a single hotel or a single sector. It spreads, because underneath the chandeliers, the marble, and the infinity pools, every luxury hotel in Dubai, from the Burj Al Arab to the Atlantis to the Fairmont and the Ritz-Carlton, is ultimately selling the same thing. The experience of not feeling like you are in the region you are physically in. That is the real product. And in March 2026, that product was no longer fully intact. Not because the buildings were destroyed, but because the illusion behind them was disrupted in a way that cannot simply be repaired with a statement, a press conference, or a carefully staged photo opportunity. But this is where the problem becomes impossible to ignore. Because what happened to the Burj Al Arab that night was never just about physical damage, and it was never just about short-term occupancy drops or canceled bookings across the city. It was about symbolism. When a building like the Crown Plaza in Bahrain takes damage, it is reported as news. When a property like the Fairmont, the Palm, is struck, it becomes front-page coverage. But when the Burj Al Arab shows visible fire on its facade, the impact operates on an entirely different level. Because for more than 27 years, that building has functioned as one of the most powerful marketing tools Dubai has ever had. More effective than advertising campaigns, more persuasive than tourism brochures, and more durable than any celebrity endorsement. Its silhouette alone could communicate everything the city wanted the world to believe, instantly and without explanation. And now, that same image has changed. Instead of a pristine white sail glowing against the backdrop of the Arabian Gulf, what circulated globally within hours was something else entirely. Smoke rising along the exterior, fire visible at the base of the structure, emergency crews, police presence, controlled access. And here is the problem with images like that. They do not disappear. They stay indexed in search results. They remain in media archives, and more importantly, they stay in the subconscious calculations of every traveler, every corporate planner, and every high-net-worth individual deciding where to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a single trip. Because in an environment where a 20-second video can shape global perception, response time is no longer just about communication, it is about protecting the brand. And once a symbol like the Burj Al Arab becomes associated, even briefly, with images of instability, emergency response, and information control, the challenge is no longer operational. It becomes psychological. It becomes reputational. And those are problems that do not resolve in weeks or months. They take years. So what happens next? In the long run, the building itself will likely be fine. It still has 202 duplex suites, 8 dedicated staff members per room, 24-hour butler service, and materials and experiences designed to withstand time, including eiderdown duvets sourced from Icelandic eider duck nests. It stands on an artificial island that has existed for more than 2 decades and is expected to remain for decades more. And it is operated by Jumeirah Group, one of the most experienced luxury hospitality operators in the world. History also suggests resilience. Dubai has already moved through the 2008 financial crisis and the global disruption of COVID, and in both cases, it returned to record-breaking visitor numbers, including in 2025. The demand for ultra-luxury travel experiences like this does not simply disappear permanently after a few weeks of regional conflict. That recovery story is real, but it is only part of the picture, because the more difficult question is not whether the Burj Al Arab will fill its rooms again. It is whether it can restore what it was really selling in the first place. When the building was conceived in 1999, the goal was clear: to create a symbol that the entire world would instantly associate with the UAE. And for 27 years, it achieved that with near perfection, representing an image of safety, control, and distance from the instability of the surrounding region. But now, that image has changed, and no amount of refurbishment on the exterior will address that shift, because the real reconstruction is not physical, it is narrative. It is about whether Dubai, and the Burj Al Arab itself, can rewrite the story it has been telling for decades, replacing the image of smoke on the facade with something strong enough to convince the world that the promise still holds. And that raises a much larger question, not whether Dubai can recover, but what exactly it will become after this.